land. So it's more like it is more like an issue of ensuring that we take action as much as we are speaking about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabatini. Thank you very much for sharing that. Let's go to Etienne.
Good morning to everyone. Actually, it's not Etienne, it's Tambe Gertrude connecting from Cameroon. I have a problem with my phone, that's why I had to use someone else for a colleague. I got the video. The video was so interesting. It was very nice. And I think this is the third time which I'm going through such a video. And actually, what I wanted to say is that the message from the video, it's very, very touching. But now, when we have to raise up our voices and speak out to the population, it's not just our voices that have to be heard, because actually we will need something like a graph. Well, actually we refer to it as a reference level. You see, to know the level at which the women, the girls are being affected, not only through the climate issues, not only through the emissions from the industry, but also the rape issue. We really need a level of reference to show that actually that is the level at which we are, and which is very, very bad for our young girls. Someone like me, I am a young girl, so I really understand what they are going through, and it will go a great way to solve our issues. So that's what I really think on my part, because our voices can't only help, but if we bring out a graph and present to them and tell them this is actually what is on ground, so we really have to really take action. It will really be a great issue, a very big help to all of us, to my own point of view.
Thank you very much for that. Darlington.
Hi, good day, everyone. My name is Darlington, and I'm from the University of Cape Town. Yeah, just for me, I think the video was quite very impactful in quite many ways. I think I can relate it to just one article I read yesterday by Pumla Gola on the issue of how patriarchal system continued to mutate and perpetuate oppression on women and girls. And I think what comes at the top of my mind will be to start by really defining what is the problem. How do we define what we have just seen now, and how that can be quite varied depending on which context you are in. But I think one can just relate to, just think around how intersectionality can really be helpful to start defining gender and climate change, just to bring that perspective and to show how various factors come together in an interplay and sort of work together towards just oppressing and keeping women and girls in quite very difficult situations. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Darlington. All very important points there. Perhaps we can also talk about the different ways in which climate change affects men and women, and your thoughts on whether there are any other people or any other groups who will be disproportionately affected by climate change. I see a hand up. Bertha, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. What this video does actually shows exactly what happens on the ground in terms of how climate change affects men and women and boys differently. But the fact that Mams Bongile stood up and challenged some of the norms that were already prevailing within the communities, challenging those in order to stand out, is something that we need to talk about. Because I think in communities, whilst climate change does that to people, it affects women, men and girls and boys and the elderly differently, women are actually at the forefront of changing that narrative. They are not the victim. You can see that here, Moms Bongile changed that whole narrative. And those are the mentors that we need to be talking about, because right now, I think we need to talk about those mentors, that it is possible to challenge that narrative, that women are vulnerable, and yet they do have a solutions to climate change, and to be the change agents, and to become the change of people that we would want to be, and to the kind of society that we want to be. So I think this was for me, I see it from that point of view, where I'm seeing women breaking those barriers and not being seen as victims, which is usually sometimes what happens all the time, where there's always a lot of tokenism, even in policies and in most of our infrastructure development, in terms of our frameworks. There's always a lot of tokenism in terms of talking about climate change and gender. And yet they are women who are actually changing that kind of narratives. And I think those voices needs to be amplified all the times, not only and celebrated, not only because of Women's Month, but all the time, because they're changing the lives of communities, but on a very large scale. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bertha. Let me read this message from Heather, saying knowledge and access to understandable and relevant information on climate change is so important right now. If we as or undereducated women in communities don't have the language for it, we can't explain to others or inform others. Thank you for sharing that viewpoint with us there, Heather. Are there any other hands? Anyone else who wants to reflect on the documentary? Perhaps we could talk about gender-based violence. We know that that's running so rampant right now in different countries, different societies, especially here in South Africa. What are some of the measures that can be put in place, you know, by ordinary citizens to stop incidents or this culture of gender-based violence? You can comment on that, or anything else around the docu-series. Innocent, I see your hand is up. Please go ahead. Innocent, your hand is up. Would you like to say something? You're still muted.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi, Innocent, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I want to comment on the issue of gender-based violence, especially what I listened to. And I was thinking, initially I thought this situation would not be happening in South Africa as well. The community where I come from is a community which borders both Congo. It's between across Congo and Sudan, as well as Uganda. But you find the gender-based violence issue also affects us here. What happens is now, because on the Ugandan side, the legal aspect of the country has grown, on our side, it doesn't happen. What happens is on the Congo side, you find when women go to fetch water, they can be abducted by men, the same way it was explained in the video. And also in the evenings when they go to the marketplace, men can ferry them off and take them to be their wives. So such things still happen, but I think it's important for communities to enter into dialogue and to try to educate, especially men, because I think the perpetrators are mostly men. Programs which are developed should be focused on men changing their way of treating women rather than the other way around. So I think different communities may take it differently, but in the traditional societies, especially my traditional society, it was something which was kind of acceptable. But in this 21st century, I don't think it is something which should still be happening to this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Innocence. There's a hand by Kasamba. I think we can take you and perhaps wrap up this segment.
Hi already. Hi everyone. My name is Kasamba. I'm climate reality leader from Johannesburg. What the video has done for me today is just to reiterate the importance of us fighting for climate justice. I think it just goes to show how disproportionate the impacts of climate change are on our society as a whole. And it highlights even more how women who are already coming from a point of so much of the world against them, you know, in terms of like right now we're addressing gender-based violence and sexual abuse and all that, you know. And on top of that, they have to deal with the ill impacts of not being able to sustain their livelihoods and take care of families and all the other things that they have to do because of what is happening in terms of climate change. So it's actually a very touching story for me, and it's something that has put me at a point of, I think, further reflection is needed on my part in terms of how, because each and every one of us, as much as we are trying to get the powers that be to listen to the many of our voices to change the way that we do things, it's also imperative for each and every one of us to find a way that we can step up, you know, because it begins with one step. So if one can start, then it becomes a huge movement. And I think that we're already doing that. But yeah, so that is what the video did for me. It just made me really want to reflect even more about what it is. And being a woman myself, knowing that I may not be equally impacted by climate change as somebody else based on where they're coming from and the kind of environment that they're in. So it just goes to show the many inequalities that are around us. And this is a good place as any for us to start looking for ways to bridge the gaps that exist in our society.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kasamba. Junior, you have a hand up. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ampumza Junior, and I am from Uganda. I am a climate reality leader, just trained last year, and I joined in late, but I want to comment about gender-based violence and cases that arise from the inequalities that happen in our social settings. Locally here I come from western part of Uganda, where actually we are having oil activities ongoing. You must have seen articles and links that are talking about the development of the East African crude oil pipeline, one of the longest pipelines in the world, and it's at estimated effects on the environment and also on the people, the communities, the villages, and the host community, the Bunyoro region at large. I have so far cited scenarios where for compensations for project affected persons, those who are evicted from the project area, those who are compensated for when these projects, for example, the roads, the ECOP that is being constructed, and the oil wells where these things are taking place. I have noted that more than 50% of the compensated homes and families ladies or females in those families have not really taken advantage of those compensations. and big amounts of money are being spent on streets and in bars by men who are socially advantaged, and women are suffering on that line. And I've also realized that while there is a lot of advocacy from NGOs and different stakeholders within the multi-stakeholders group as these development projects are going on in the Albertine region, women are being empowered, and sensitization and awareness is being created of a lot of knowledge that women did not know on land rights. I work with MIRAC, which is Midwestern Region Anti-Corruption Coalition. We are implementing a project that talks about inclusive land rights prevention and conflict resolution that empowers women above the rest of the groups in the communities to own land and use it for their benefit, and also can be able to distribute it to whoever they would want to in the old times, and also when they are aging up and they want their resources shared with their children. So that's part of what is happening, and I'm commending work from NGOs and the government as well. There is much work that is being done right now. The ladies have information and they're trying to come up. The conversations I just talked about happened, I think, around last year in the RAP 1 and RAP 2. On Monday this week, which was, I think, yes, we are having a CSO meeting or joint CSO update about the RAP 1 and RAP 2, which is a resettlement action plans for these projects ongoing in Albertine. And the number of issues are being pointed out. A few cases are being right now being solved, but the ladies now, it's not like it was, I think, 2 years back, but it's coming up. Although injustices are still there, and climate is also becoming a social issue that is affecting the gender, I think there is work being done, and I'm commending the work by the NGOs and the government and the other stakeholders in Uganda. So I might have missed the video, but that's what I've observed from my area in Uganda. I can beg to submit and say that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Junior. And for those of you who missed the video, you can catch it on YouTube, as well as on the ACRP website, on the ACRP YouTube page, on our social media pages. Please do take the time to watch it. But we're going to move on to the next section of our program, of our agenda, and that's the panel discussion. Before I hand over to my colleague Courtney to lead us during that segment, I just want to introduce some of the amazing panelists who will be leading the conversation today. And please feel free to still send your comments. You can still send them through the chat, and we will be reading them and posing them to the panelists. But I'll start with Ewi Lama. She has more than 9 years experience in research and development. Currently, she's an environmental and climate justice advocate at Forests, Resources and People and Director of Programs at the Pan-African Center for Climate Policy, where she focuses on developing entrepreneurship support and programs that facilitate the representation and channeling of rural voices. And we also have Gabriel Claassen. He's a 24-year-old intersectional justice activist from Cape Town, South Africa. He is the communications officer and a spokesperson for Project 90 by 2030 and the youth coordinator and programs manager for African Climate Alliance. They're also noted as one of Mail and Guardian's 200 Young South Africans 2021 in the environmental category. Francina Nkosi is also one of our panelists today. She runs the Waterberg Women's Advocacy Organization and works with young women and girls doing education work on climate change. She's also from a mining affected community and fights the funding of new mines. And last but not least, we have Sibongile, the Director for Women's Leadership and Training Program. That's an NGO in KZN. She's a grassroots activist focusing on the intersectionality of gender, water, women's health, climate change, and biodiversity with girls and young women. She holds a master's in international development, rural women's participation in climate change adaptation strategies, and she's also a senior Atlantic Fellow for Health Equity in South Africa and an Ireland Fellowship alumni. She works on strengthening girls and women's leadership so that they can use their agency and voice to dismantle patriarchal structural norms and systems that oppress them through education. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really do look forward to your views. Let me hand over now to Courtney, who will facilitate this discussion.
Thank you so much, Aurelie, and thank you to everyone for sharing your comments and your experiences. Like I said in the chat, it's so amazing to have people from across Africa and even beyond our continent. So please share your experiences in the chat. If you have anything to say, we'd love to hear it. But for now, we're going to go into our panelist discussion. We have 4 amazing panelists, and each of them will speak for around 10 minutes. And then we'll have a Q&A session where we can have more of an informal discussion. So thank you so much. And I'm going to hand over to, can I ask for Sibongile to give us her input first? If you can just turn on your camera and then we can start.
Okay, good day, everyone. Yes, my name is Sibongile Courtney. I didn't hear your question. What do you want me to say?
Thanks. You can just give your input on the work that you do, but also how you see climate as a gendered issue. Yeah, I know we learned a lot in the video, but just, yeah, how do you see it as a gendered issue?
Okay. Yes, yeah, so good day, everyone. You know, many people have been talking about the gender-based violence. And I just want to highlight how it's a climate change problem as well. But I would like to just give you a short story that has just made my heart so, my spirit is so heavy at the moment, because last week on the 1st of August, we received the shocking news in South Africa that have, you know, the stories that have gone viral of the 2 girls, matriculants, who were killed, brutally killed. And when I say brutally, I've never seen something like this in my life. They were brutally killed in their home or in the place where they were staying so that they could be closer to the school. And yesterday we buried one of those girls, and one of those girls belonged to this project. Sadly, she is one of those girls that you saw in the docu-series. So my heart is very heavy at this time when it comes to gender-based violence, but also when I think about it, putting it into perspective of climate change, is that climate change just brings something so heavy on girls and women in rural areas, especially girls, because they are most vulnerable. They are treated as such. They are nobody. They are someone's girl to marry someone in the community or out of the community to be wives so that they can have a voice. So then you begin to have a voice once you are married. And it means with climate change, with the shortage of water, for an example, girls are not going to be asked how they feel about water being far away because of dry seasons being longer or because of drought. What happens with them is that it is their assigned duty, their gender role to fetch water. It's a given, it's just like that. And it means the vulnerability they face because of patriarchy and how society is organized. When climate change comes, it just adds more on that burden for them. And to know that no matter how much you try as a grassroots activist, you know, organizing girls, working with them from the youngest age. For an example, this girl, Amanda, we've known her since she was 9 years old, and today she was 18, you know, when she was killed. So that's a 9 years of investment for us to investing on the leadership of a girl in a community. And then gender-based violence comes, and take her away just like that, And thinking that cases of climate change are not decreasing in our communities all the time. Either we face drought or longer dry seasons, or we face floods. So girls are just going to be in the middle of that drought and floods. And it means their vulnerability is going to increase more and more. And if you take the floods that have happened in South Africa in April, it also shows that more girls and women, of course, and children, were in the highest number of the victims that were that got killed. So whether it's dry or it's too wet, girls are in the middle, sinking in it all. And with climate change, we produce food, through agroecology. For the first time in my life, I've seen climate change affecting our gardens in a way that we ended up having no food for a season. Because of wetting, it became too wet. Sometimes it becomes too hot, but this time it became too wet. So it means climate change is just going to increase our vulnerability of water, of food security, but also of safety of girls and women on the way to fetch water or to secure livelihoods. So it is that reality. However, we cannot be stopped. That's one thing that we know. We've chosen this, we cannot be stopped. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sibongile, and my condolences and the condolences, from everyone here on the passing of your young comrade. We weren't aware of that, and I really apologize for that. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of other people in the call are also quite emotional about that. So our deepest condolences on that. Thank you for sharing your story as well. You, I think everyone has said it in the chat, but you are truly so inspirational. And the work that you do is so important. And I just want to say thank you for sharing, even on this very difficult day. At this point, I just want to hand over to Gabriel to share their experience, and just please tell us, your experience.
Thank you so much, Courtney, and thank you all. I think I just want to acknowledge, first of all, my deepest condolences to those who are affected and who lost the fallen comrade, or not the fallen, but the murdered young woman. I think we can't say it any lighter than that, because otherwise it's a disservice and an injustice to act as though it wasn't a life ripped away from the hands and hearts of loved ones. So kind of moving into just a bit of because I knew that the session would get a bit heavy, I wrote down a few of my points, just because it's not necessarily a space where I never, in fact, I'll end up rambling for the 10 minutes rather than saying what I actually want to say, because of how emotionally charged a topic like this can get, especially for people who have experienced the violence and the injustice that comes with gender-based violence, gender injustice, as well as climate injustice. And so I'm just going to kind of regale a little bit about the work that we do, and then go into my kind of thoughts and points. So I work for an organization, two organizations called African Climate Alliance and Project 90 by 2030. The work that we do there is social and environmental justice work, because we don't believe that one can be done without the other. Because it's quite a silly thing if you believe that, there aren't intersections and interconnectedness when it comes to the way we find solutions when addressing our injustices. Someone doesn't just be a woman, they're a woman of color, they're a woman of color who are this, they're a woman of color who are this and that. And so we can't act as though that, you are one person without many identity factors that play a role in the impact that you have when it comes to the injustices, which doesn't mean that you also don't have all those other ways of finding solutions for those injustices. And so just moving into kind of a little bit about what we all know already is just that we all know that disproportionately climate injustice and climate change disproportionately affects young women, women, girls, young boys. Femme bodies are always the ones who are most targeted. We've seen this in the video. We know this in general, with South Africa being the rape capital of the world. We know this just because at least someone knows someone who has been a victim of gender-based violence one way or another. And I think to not acknowledge the harms that young girls and that women face disproportionately, which is not to say that young boys and men don't face injustice as well, but just talking about it in a more kind of realistic sense, is that it's a massive issue when it comes to the harms that women and young girls face. So there's a concept, and I think I mentioned this sometime last year in a similar kind of panel where we were speaking, and I think Bertha mentioned it earlier, which was, looking at women as victims. And I think, there's a saying, you strike a woman, you strike a rock, but that's also made us believe that it's okay to strike a woman. And so you strike a woman and she will bleed is more accurate, but it's not to say that she doesn't hold the strength and the power that comes with that first saying, yet we should not keep looking at women as they're unable to push forward in our nation, in our continent, across the world, in fact. Time and time again, we've seen that women have been at the core and the forefront at the fight for justice and fight against injustice, not just for them, not just for young children, but for everyone. We've seen it spearheaded time and time again with very little credit to no credit given to women for their work and their actions. We can't look past these injustices, and we can't continue to allow them to happen, not just the gender injustice, but the climate injustice. When a climate disaster hits us, for example, the one that happened in KZN, when a climate disaster hits us, for example, the drought that we had in Cape Town a few years ago, the one that's happening right now in Eastern Cape, we see that women and young girls are the most vulnerable when it comes to having to protect themselves from the already heated or vulnerable spaces that they're in and placed in due to this climate disaster, but also that somehow through it all, they've got to clean up and care for people in those times of crises because of the social reproduction kind of a role that we've assigned women over time, this being a clear aspect of the patriarchy, of the system that is capitalism, that we've kind of assigned women this role of, cool, you're a carer, which means you're going to care for things, but we're not going to acknowledge you and we're going to continue to abuse and harm you. And I think that's where the slap in the face really comes in, where we have to understand that it's more than that. And that we've got to look at women as an example of how we can move forward and how we can push forward. But it also comes into understanding that climate justice is gender justice and vice versa. Where we begin to see a way forward is by looking at the fact that one is not without the other, but in fact, they intersect. We begin to see a future where women are climate resilient and free from harms and from further impact, not only of the climate injustices, but the social and economic harms that face them as well and plague them as well. We also see the need, and I think this was quite beautifully said by Mam Sibongile, is that we need to see young girls and women equipped with the skills, that they need for this future that they don't know is coming. I think we don't all know what's coming, but we do have an inkling of an idea of the realities and the harms that we face today, of what could be coming tomorrow. Educating young girls is so crucial, yet there is a massive issue when it comes to that because of these roles that we've assigned and perpetuated and allowed to continue to plague us when it comes to, this is what a woman does, stay there, do that. When in fact, it shouldn't be that case. It should be everyone doing their best to serve their communities, to serve their family. Everyone trying to make sure that we don't have these issues, which is where we come into the point of, looking at reducing the inequalities that women face is where we begin to find the origins for climate injustice. is where we begin to see the way forward. If we start with the most affected in mind, in our solution building, we begin to see everyone rise. A rising tide lifts all boats, but some people don't have a boat. And so we've got to begin there. We've even got to begin before then to look at the deeply rooted injustices that prevented us to have the people, or to the people to have those boats, which is where we start looking at the issues of men and others disproportionately, or not disproportionately, but historically rather, shall I say, having this sense of hierarchy, which is not to discredit the harms and injustices that they face and young boys face as well. And I just want to kind of highlight that as well, because I often know that there can be quite a bit of discourse. But the problem is that when it comes from men, there is a bigger issue when it comes to them putting forward the harms and the pain when it comes to gender injustice that we face in this country and across the world. A solution that needs to come forward needs to be one that centers women to the core. Quite often, the way that we see women centering, or movements needing to center women in the core. And so this is where it comes from. It centers women, but it involves all. That's how we see it. This new generation that's coming forward, this new generation of activists, of individuals who don't even want to call themselves activists, but change makers. This is an opportunity for us to mold and to grow the minds of the future to ensure that this happens. There's a new generation of young women who can acknowledge their agency and power. I don't believe in the thing where we say we empower women and young girls. We don't empower women and young girls. We capacitate them. We help them see their own power so that they can act on it. No one can give you your power. No one can take your power away. It rests within you, and the notion that we've instilled and made people believe that they don't have it. That's the issue. We have deprived so many from this thing that we need, which is self-worth and self-belief, which is access to skills, which is access to resources. And we need to break that. We need to break that chain before it breaks us. The way forward, to leave you on a negative note, is that we need everyone to be a part of fixing this broader issue, which is something that's left behind by the patriarchy and the system that is deeply rooted in injustice and capitalism. We need to find a new way forward. We need to find a society and an economy, a way forward that benefits all. We need a caring economy, one that values and acknowledges, not just values in I acknowledge you and I value you, but values cash, money, resources, access to skills, values women, values those who are carers, nurturers. We need a caring economy put forward, one that we not only acknowledge, but we actively implement. We need to look at the lens, at the injustices that we face, the solution through a lens of matricentricity, which means to center the mother, to center the woman. So we need that focus. We need our young boys and we need our men to be raised and to find and unlearn and relearn what it means to be a carer, to be a nurturer, so that we can make sure that we grow a generation of people willing to be accountable, not just to have safe spaces, but willing to be accountable for their actions, for their gender, and for the clear injustices that they continue to allow to perpetuate. This is how we begin to see change, not only here in South Africa, but across the continent, across the world. We need to make sure that when we instill these values of caring, of nurturing, of need to be there for others, that it's not only in young women and girls that we put this in. We need to make sure it's everyone. Gender justice is climate justice. And the only way that we begin to see that take play is when we make sure that we see things at a lens of what we'd like to see it. We can't allow things to continue the way that they are. And frankly speaking, it can't only be August each year that we bring it up. I think it's quite a slap in the face to those who have fallen already and those who will continue to fall if we don't continue to act. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you so much, Gabe. I see a lot of comments coming through, but just especially, what you said around care work and, a caring economy. I think that's really important work. And yeah, I completely agree. A lot of agreement with you in the comments, and completely agree that this is not a discussion just for August. This is especially in South Africa, you know, we tend to say August is Women's Month, and I know we have a lot of people on the call from across Africa and across the world actually. So this is, yeah, that we will not stop talking about gender, and we will not, you know, stop saying that climate justice is gender justice. So thank you for reminding us of that. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Ewi to share her inputs. Ewi, are you here?
Hello. Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm going to hand over to you, Ewi, just to share your experience. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thank you, Courtney, and thank you, everyone. I've listened to wonderful stories, and of course, I want to really say, anytime I listen to Sibongele's video, I don't know how many times I've been able to play this video in my workshops, in my seminars, and wherever I find myself, and I have a chance to be able to express myself in that light. So I remember the last year around this time, we had a Zoom webinar like this, and it was a crying session for Sibongele and I, because we had to rethink of that video and tried expressing ourselves at our best capacities. And like the last speaker just said, these are not just discussions for August, they are discussions for every month. I remember when I was growing up, I lost my dad when I was 4 years old. And we lived in a beautiful city then. My dad had all the money he had and everything that needed to keep us fine. But based on my tradition, where women are not given the right to take over their husband's property, my mom was deprived of every wealth my dad had, and we had to move to the village. So in the village, we stayed there I was 4, so we stayed there for 3 years. And I can still remember my mom going away from us, and she would stay in the forest for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days or more, because she was trying to get a living for us. And as I've grown up over the years, I realized that the reason she was going that far was because she was looking for fertile soil where she could be able to plant and have the best yield, because the soils around the community were degraded, and they did not, what she expected, she could not get from it. So my mom had to go very far, and at a point, she was able to have this beautiful vegetable garden, which attracted the interest of some agricultural officers that came and had some inspections at that place. And that was a boost to our market, because she started supplying vegetables to a lot of farmers and to a lot of market women. Now, when we talk about climate change, we see a lot of things that climate change has done. And as time has gone by, I've realized that it's not something that started today, but this is about 25 years counting. And I still tend to see the same things happening even in our time. I grew up with an interest looking into soil because my mom really paid a lot of attention into soil. I remember we had this cassava tuber farm where the only thing that could grow on that land was cassava, because the soil was so degraded that other crops could not grow on that particular farm. So we had to work cassava, cultivate so much cassava that was able to pay our school fees, was able to take care of us as home. That cassava sales was able to do a lot of things for us. And we lived the best lives within that, because we felt like my mom was doing the best and she was giving us the best opportunity to live as the richest children around. And this was from cassava, from a degraded land. And at a point, we ate so much cassava that we had to eat cassava, because in Cameroon, we can transform cassava into a lot of things. Gari, fufu, the tubers just boiled up. So we ate so much cassava that my little sister caught malnutrition. And this was another issue that brought a lot of attention. There was no money to be able to take her to the hospital, because my mom couldn't afford the bills that had been given her. And we had to see how she could stay alive. And today, praise God, she's fine. So these are the stories and more. And when I continue looking into how climate change has affected us, and we've also become victims of climate change over time, I throw myself back into my village. When I was there as a little child, I used to go miles to fetch water. When we came to the city and I got grown up, and we had all the beautiful areas that we thought we're having the best of life, we still realized we couldn't have water flowing in our homes. And myself, my mom, and my little sister had to go across, we had to cross streets to get water in different neighborhoods to bring into our homes. And consider a home that has a water closet, a home people need to bathe, you need to cook, you need to do laundry and all of that. How many times do we go across the streets to get water? And when I'm talking, this is like a 30-minute walk away from where we actually grew up. We had to walk across the streets, carry water buckets on our head, and take them to our home. We couldn't afford to pay maybe hire a taxi or so to help us carry the water, because the little money we had was very precious to us. And we thought it was important to get food than for us to spend the money on a taxi or a cab taking us to home with water on our head. So we'll preferably come to that place and carry water like 5 or 6 times in one day. That's 30 minutes times 6 times 2 in one day. And we will have that water, and the water will not last 2 or 3 days, and it will be done. So this didn't only end with us. Sometimes in 2010, we had this issue in Cameroon that the Igbo cocoyam was disappearing. That is a delicacy for most of us coming from the Northwest region. And the Igbo cocoyam was used for what we for an important meal we called achu. So that means achu was going to go extinct because people did not have Igbo cocoyam to cook achu anymore. We had the nangtare, it was going to go extinct because there was no cocoyam. Climate change, like some scientists said within the country, it was as a result of acid rain that has been caused by climate change. So these are some of the issues around climate change we hear, and there are more, and we can't overemphasize them. We have spoken about the issues of disaster, conflicts, even crimes surrounding climate change. And these are concerns that each and every one of us here can relate. We have been victims of this point. When we look at it in 2019, I decided to look into a master's research around how climate change affected women in a particular community, considering that that community had received a huge amount of money. The council around the community had received a huge amount of money from the World Bank to carry out RED Plus programs in that community. For those who are hearing RED Plus for the first time, that is reducing emissions from deforestation and degradation in communities around forests. So this money was actually embezzled, malhandled, and the projects were not carried out. my research in that community actually showed that this work, I was looking at, my concern was more about were women even involved in this work? Were women even involved? Were they even beneficiaries of this project? But when I realized that women, when this program, even the poor people in that community, the men who were poor, they were not in elite positions, were not given the chance to participate in this program. I interviewed over 100 women, but out of 100 women, only 4 of them had heard about the project, and only 2 of them had taken part in the project. I remember someone mentioned we should be able to take statistics and talk about put up graphs and all of that. So those were some of the things that actually were noticed in that research. And then I sat and I said, climate change was not just a women's issue. Climate change is a gender issue, gender in all domains. Because we haven't even mentioned about the people with disabilities, how climate change affects them and how they are neglected because of climate change and climate issues around them. How they are not involved in decision-making platforms and programs, how they are not involved in policies because of their disabilities. Not to talk of the women who are raped on a daily basis because they are going out of the country to look for jobs. We have had cases. I am part of the Youth Against Slavery movement, and as part of them, we have cases that have come of young girls who have gone to Kuwait and other countries in the Middle East to look for jobs. And when you look at the background of the whole thing, you realize that it stems from climate change, because maybe their communities are facing droughts, there's low crop yield, and they decide to go out to fend for themselves or to get a living, to look for greener pastures for their families. So we realize that in everything around us, climate change has had its toll. That is why every one of us, everybody listening, watching us today, must take deliberate actions in solving the climate crisis. And we take those deliberate actions in solving this climate crisis. First, someone mentioned in the course of the conversation here about traditional knowledge. I think it's high time for us to promote promote research around traditional knowledge when it comes to climate change. Community people know climate change, but they don't know it in the way we know it. They don't call it climate change. They have a different way that they will call it. So let's carry out research to see how climate change affects these people and how they have been working to solve it at their local level. Traditional knowledge is very important if we want to have measure statistics on climate change. Secondly, we should look into everyone in climate change decision-making platforms and programs, not leaving out children, women, disabled people, youth, old people, and every other person that can contribute in this in one way or the other. And also, we should be able to promote education around climate change. We should be able to run programs around climate change. Some of the things that we've been doing at our local level is running eco clubs where we teach children climate change issues and raise them up as climate ambassadors, because we realize that climate change is a transgenerational thing and it will not end today. It did not end yesterday and it will not end tomorrow. And so we need to raise up a generation of young people who will be able to stand up and have their voices heard as the years go by, until our policymakers take the right decision, until our policymakers make sure that the things that have to be done are being done at the local level. And better still, the best way to make sure things are brought, we will not use violence, we will not use arrogance to influence our policies. One of the greatest tools I've realized in influencing policies is us using the media and using arts as a tool of influence. Everybody loves beautiful pictures. Everybody loves beautiful images. And there is no way you will see a beautiful picture and you pass by. So when we start using arts, songs, music, dance, paintings to talk about climate issues and get people's attention on climate change issues, we are going to get more people involved in this than what we have been doing over the years. If we can start using our media Instead of criticizing, we use our media to talk about what we are expecting, the Africa we want, the world we want, the continent we want. We are going to be able to get a lot of things on the table. We are having COP27 coming up, and I am around the Congo Basin. And one of my concerns is, how do we bring people on the table from the local level to be part of these conversations, and not just every other person coming because they want to be showcased or because they want to speak huge languages. I'll call it grammar. But we need everyone on the table to make sure the artists, the politicians, the people in the school, the uneducated people, let them all come to the table and have their voice mentioned and have their voices heard at these decision-making platforms. And also, please, we need to support climate projects at all levels. We need to support climate projects, sponsor them if we can, encourage those around us if we can, volunteer for those projects if you can. We are not running a competition. We are running a race to be able to overcome the climate crisis. And that race is not about who is winning. The race is about what we are getting at the end. And we need everyone to hold our hands together and we run. Like the South African word that says Ubuntu, we are there because you are there. And that means that when I read the story of Ubuntu, it was these children who were given food, and all of them decided to wait until they eat together because they were not running to have the first big bite. And that is what we need to start doing. We need to wait and eat together. We need to wait and do things together. When we see someone doing something on climate, see someone doing something around our communities, we don't need to wait to be called. We need to forge ourselves into that place and tell them, I have this capacity, I have this skill, and this is how I can help you. And that is how we can be able to do this together, and we'll be able to be the victors that we want to be. Thank you so much. So at my local scale, what we do with women is we build their capacity on livelihood programs, because women need to be financially stable to be part of the decision-making platform. And we also encourage young girls. For example, we brought in the Miss Environment concept, where we brought young girls to model for nature. And this was one of its kind in my community. We raised up an advocacy program for school children. And then we also brought communities to play football for trees, where they were able to play football and plant trees at the same time. That is a little bit of what we do, and there is more that we do. And I'm sure as time goes on, you'll be able to know a lot more about us and the work that we've been carrying out in Cameroon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eri. Again, the comment section is going wild, just in agreement with you, saying, everything that you said was very powerful. And I think also just, what you said about running this race together, it's not a competition. We have to be together. I think, really points to the solidarity that a lot of us have been talking about and pushing in the climate justice movement. Your work is absolutely amazing. And definitely, to all the attendants of this meeting, definitely keep an eye on our social media. Eri's story will definitely feature in the coming months. So just a little bit of a teaser there. Thank you so much, Eri. And yeah, at this point, I want to hand over to my friend Sina, who also has an amazing story to share. I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay, greetings everyone, and my apology. I'm going to switch off the video because my network coverage is not good, so that I can be able to do my proper presentation. My apology for that.
Not a problem. Thank you.
I want to start with a scenario where you do your cooking in the house. While you're busy cooking in the house, then somebody comes in without invitation, and then that person starts to tell you, no, don't cook like that, and you people, you are too many in this house. I think this house belongs to me. You need to go and see where you can live. And then the person starts to own your house, and own everything that you have, clothes, furniture, and then you become homeless. The scenario that I'm talking about is how mining do things. They find you with a beautiful land, and then you are homeless. Okay. As women, you used to do farming. I'm talking about Lepalale, where I am, and people used to do their things, you know, take care of the animals. If they are sick, they know that there are remedies in the farm, and then they will get that medicine, you know, the herbal way. And that one, it's how we used to do things. But now, due to mega projects, other indigenous seeds or other indigenous plants, they fade away, including the indigenous birds, you know, the bees, because we need those bees for pollination. And if we don't have them, it means they can't do their work. Now, with the climate change that is happening now, is that we're no more doing farming as we used to do, because my area is very hot, and you need to know a technique of doing farming so that you can save water. And when you try to preserve your seeds, you need a person who knows how to store their seeds properly. And that is where we'll be saying, let's go back to our roots, the way we used to do things, so that we can be able to protect the animals, protect especially Mother Earth. When we look at how COVID affected us, most of people, they didn't know what to do, how to survive. And that is a challenge of how are you going to put a plate of meal on your table. And let's not forget that the colonialism was about the wealth, and we don't have that wealth as we speak, because now the capitalism has no vision. They make sure that whatever they do, it's about now, and about you'll see how you survive. For us as an organization, we are a local organization, but we realized that since Midupi started in 2007, nothing good came out of it. When people are affected by load shedding, we are affected more. The network coverage here is bad, whereby you will think that we are in another continent. Yes, we are in the rural area. Women who are in rural areas are less fortunate with information. More things are being done in urban areas. And now with our organization, we said, why don't we start a study group so that these young girls and youth, they can have that capacity of understanding what is climate change, how climate change is affecting them, so that we can be able to have the youth that is more informed, that could challenge the municipality from the local up to the national government, to the parliament. Because we can't, the group of my age, we can't rely on us now, because we need to make sure that we capacitate from the kindergarten form so that they can be more knowledgeable and save the continent for themselves. Because if we don't do that, it means there's a gap that is happening. Activism is about telling the story of the reality happening in our community and documenting. What we do, we write stories and making sure that if we write stories and then we put them on social media, we're making sure that those who are in other countries, they understand what is Lephalale, how is Lephalale being affected, because other countries, they think that because we have this mega project, then the communities are more knowledgeable or maybe they are empowered. No, it's not like that. The only thing is all about us to make sure that we capacitate one another because we have more of teenage pregnancies. We have blessers, as you know, a mega project will bring you a big project, and the blessers, they left their wives or girlfriends at home, and now that also leads to the gender-based violence, because on that, the gender-based violence, it's not about people who are fighting in the home. The gender-based violence is all about the poverty, the food security. If that's not that, we're going to fight, because now we're going to fight for survival, making sure that you eat, and that is a challenge that is there. All the speakers that they spoke before me, I concur with them. And to add again is making sure that let's build from bottom up approach, making sure that whatever did happen at KZN, it doesn't happen in other provinces. So that if we challenge our own municipalities and making sure that they include the policies of climate change, of the just transition, making sure that all this sewage that are flooding, they turn them into renewable energy so that the community, especially women, can be sustainable. We mustn't forget that if you walk a long distance to go and fetch water, when you come back, you are tired and there's a risk of being raped. You go and fetch firewood. You fetch firewood, but we forget that when we fetch that firewood, no one is planting trees to make sure that we can fetch more firewood. But when you come back also, you become a victim of being raped. The other thing also is knowing that women are carrying a heavy burden, because they make sure that whatever household is being done. And when you do household, you don't have your chance to sit down and look at your books, because we give more time to the family and less time to ourselves. That's the other part where women, they are carers. They make sure that they care to others. And it's not about the family only, but including the community at large. And we forget about ourselves as women to heal, or to make sure that whatever problem you have, you talk about it and relieve that, so that you can carry another burden. Because as women and girls, we are also victims of those capitalists who uses women to enrich themselves, who uses women to ask you to pay to get a job, or to pay to get a land. In my community, the land is owned by the capitalists. Municipality doesn't have land. And for you to have a farm, it means you need to have your own way on saying how you can go to ESCOM or you go to Exaro to lease you a land. And that you find a man, and that man won't leave you like that. They will ask you, how much do you have, or what can you offer me? And that, it shows the inequality, and it shows that women suffer a lot of things, and women's rights are human rights. We have the right to live, and we have the right to dignity and protection. Let's raise awareness and the consciousness of equity, just transition, and gender justice. With that, we're going to achieve more. And unity and solidarity, we can achieve a lot of things, because if you are alone, you can't conquer anything. But it means we can conquer together. We are strong if we are together. Whatever is happening in another province, let's show the support of saying, this is how we can do things, this is how we can survive. And that way, it takes courage to do something, and it takes courage not to do anything. My closing is that let's make sure that from the kindergarten upwards, we learn and also unlearn to do things. Let's promote our African way to save the Mother Earth for the future generation. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma Francina. I think I really enjoyed what you shared, especially around, women and their care work, again, linking back to what Gabriel had said. But also, just women as community builders. And I think this is also what a lot of the people in this call are doing, are building their communities and capacitating their communities to wield their power against, whether it is mining companies, or whether it's against, banks or whoever it is. I think it's really amazing work. And just for context, Ma Francina is from a community that has been affected by Medupi, which is a project that is largely funded by the African Development Bank. So that's also ties into some of the work that a lot of you will know that we do around the funding of coal and other fossil fuels. So thank you so much to our amazing panelists again. I wish we were all together so we could all clap, because I think it was absolutely amazing. Your stories and your perspectives and your experiences are just so valued in the space. And I think also just so important for the space to learn from Indigenous knowledge, but also learn from storytelling, and just centering lived experience, and not just the science, and not just technical language. So thank you again. I'm going to open the floor. I anticipate there may be quite a few questions or comments. We have about 20 minutes. So if anyone in the call would like to ask a specific question to any of the panelists about the specific work that they do, all of them are involved in really important projects. Or if you would just like to talk about how you felt after these amazing panelist inputs, please feel free to raise your hand and we can share. I don't see any hands yet. Also, if you didn't get a chance in the first round, if you'd like to share anything on your response to the video, please feel free to do so as well. But yeah, any specific questions or have the panelists stunned us so much that there's nothing more to say. I see quite a few people are talking in the chat as well. Okay, before let me go to Nomfundo. Please share with us.
Thank you so much for that, Courtney. Very thought-provoking session. Thank you so much. The panel really did justice. So I am based in Umkomazi on the south coast of Durban. So I'm an environmentalist, and what we've realized, I feel we did so much of justice, and I feel thought-provoked in the sense that while we're here talking about all these solutions that we're creating, community-led initiatives around climate change are really important. As an environmentalist who's working on grassroots issues, so I am an informal waste picker in low-income communities. So now having to address all of these complexities, I feel yes, these virtual platforms are good and all dandy for us to host sessions and look at ways that we can organize, but at a grassroots level. So what does it mean beyond this for the conversation that we're having here? Does it mean there's possible collaborations, there's possible solidarity that are being created by the space? Because I fully understand that climate change is not a specific gender issue, but it's just a holistic, it touches on other issues. Because as an NGO, we also were able to draw into context how even accessing resources, natural resources. And I think Sisbongile has been highlighting these issues. But what does this mean to also queer communities? Because I feel the focus has been on women, and again, on the fluidity now of sexuality. What does it mean to queer communities and their safety and their mental health and climate change, and also accessing natural resources? Because I feel we've been so focused in saying the help comes from communities, but how again can we organize? Can we participate and say we're giving power to communities? Because I feel policies, again, strategies, they have this time frame that in 30 days a lot of damage can be done. But if now this indigenous information is being archived by communities, they understand, they fully have ownership, the social actioning that is happening. I hope I'm sharing some sense. My head is just rambling with some ideas and thought-provoking things that we can do. But first and foremost, I think the power needs to go back to communities, and communities that need to start having a sense of urgency and organizing for us to talk about climate change. What does it mean in a holistic gender spectrum? Thank you so much for that, Courtney.
Thank you, Nomfundo. That's a very, very important point as well, that, that we're being inclusive when we talk about these issues, and we're using language that speaks to young people and speaks to communities that are vulnerable. So I'm going to take a few more questions. I also see that Bertha from Gender CC is still with us. So if you would also like to, unmute and tell us a bit more about the work that Gender CC does. I know we were struggling to find a time. So if you would like to speak as well, you are welcome. But also if any of the panelists have a comment or a reaction to Nomfundo's question or comment, I guess, please feel free. And if there's any hands, please, let's continue the discussion. But I see Bertha and then Umar. Okay.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I really enjoyed this, starting even with the video. And also it touches very much on the work that we are doing. And most of the time, it's about ensuring that we bring in women leadership in terms of dealing with the climate crisis. And that is the work that we are mostly involved in, and using gender sensitive approaches in order to lead to more sustainable outcomes in order for us to have this climate compatible development that we are looking for. We've realized that if we leave women as leaders, therefore all the solutions that we try to implement even on the ground, which relates to issues of water, energy, and food security, they do not work. So bringing in the women themselves, the youth, and the men themselves to design, to think through exactly what they think they need, especially in terms of how they should work in order to ensure that those resources are available to everyone, to the communities. The women have to be part of that decision and the decision-making process. Most of the work that we do is to ensure that we try and change that whole narrative in terms of where the power relations are mostly based on the male, that male dominance. We try to bring in the male themselves so that we talk together to say, how can we create the climate compatible, a gender responsive climate compatible development where we involve both men, women, everyone with their different skills come in, because usually the water, energy, and food nexus becomes the responsibility of women all the time. So we bring in everyone to make sure that we bring out, even in the participation, in the consultation, in the implementation of the projects, we bring both men, women, the youth, the elderly, so that they understand where they can come in, indigenous knowledge, how it comes in. They're using, especially working with the small scale farmers that we work with, they bring in a lot of their knowledge in terms of indigenous knowledge, in terms of knowing what seed varieties to plant, how the water saving schemes that they use, that they used to use before, how to continue to use grey water, some of the medicinal plants that they use that are very useful. And those are some of the things that we continue to use and to look at in terms of the community. And we view the community and the women's leadership as very unique in the development of every community, because as what was said already, in terms of even entrepreneurship, climate resilient entrepreneurs that are coming up, we've seen that when most of these women are developed, they're aware, they're empowered, they've got resources, they do not just develop themselves only in terms of whether they are producing organic honey, the food gardens, the agro processing that they do, the processing mangoes into acha and all those other small businesses that they're creating. They do not just benefit themselves, but they benefit the whole communities. Everyone is ensured that they have something to eat. So therefore, we should actually be able to always consider and always give precedence to the contribution and the way, and also celebrate women's leadership. And those are the things that we do as Gender CC. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bertha. Also very, very important work. I've seen that Umar's hand has gone down, so I don't know if you would like to still speak, but for now I'm going to hand over to Andrew, and then back to Ewi. And Umar, if you still, yeah. Cool. Andrew, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I'm very impressed firstly with the number of women that are in attendance. And I'm also very impressed with the level of conviction. Somebody once said that men speak out of convenience, but women speak out of what they feel in their hearts. So I feel the participation of women in most of these programs would lead to success. Had it been that men were not very selfish to include women in all the programs that we do, we could have met our objectives by now, but it's never too late. I just wanted to give in an advice to women to say, please continue, don't relent, because with that motherly heart, nature will be taken care of nicely. And if we have large women participating, large number of women participating, this agenda will be a success. Thank you.
Thank you for that encouragement, Andrew. Ewi.
All right, I'm coming in again. Thank you. I think Becca highlighted a little bit of some of the stuff I wanted to talk about. I wanted to take this example of she bringing out the fact that women should be able, the programs, women-led programs should be funded, handled, and I want to agree with that in the context, like when I started environmental and climate just advocacy, it was a very difficult thing for me because communities, then that was like 10 years ago. So communities thought I was too young to advocate, and to not just advocating, but advocating for women. And they said, they thought I was being disrespectful by trying to counteract some cultures and some traditional practices around women, like not keeping women in the kitchen, but having them also go to school, having them at decision-making platforms, getting women at the local council. So they found it like it was, my mom didn't bring me up well. And it had to take a long time to get that conviction. One of the things I realized is when I lead projects and I take my team into the field, I get the attention of the community more than when it's a male colleague who is taking us to the field. And I realized that people tend to pay more attention when a woman takes up, when a woman is taking up a task that has been known that it's only men who are supposed to handle that task. Before now, I always knew men were the ones who were project coordinators, project managers, especially when they're about community work, because they thought that the men could be the only one who could handle things like that. And when I started volunteering in an organization that is female-led, and this lady, she taught me something. She said, you can also lead projects, you can also lead programs. And when I started doing that, I gained more respect from the communities. And it happened that within that organization, programs which were led by those of us who are women had more success comparatively, because the community members, in their mind, they know women are fragile, and they will want to obediently do what is being told based on the manner of approach as well. That I think Francina mentioned, that women have a nurturing attitude. And based on that, the way the projects are presented, it catches their attention and they're able to do it, to participate in those programs. So if women or led programs are encouraged within our communities, it will be another way for us to be able to overcome the climate crisis and to make things go smoothly and on time.
Thank you so much, Eri. Thank you. I completely agree with you. Thank you so much. Sibungile, I see that your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Courtney. I think someone has talked about the whole issue of climate change, identity, and spirituality. I think part of what is not well understood at the moment is that as girls, as women, as indigenous communities, as people of diverse faith, I think it's not well understood that when we are fighting for climate justice, it is about our souls. It is about who we are beside being flesh that we see. it's about traditions that tell us that we are biodiversity, that we are one, you know, we are the whole, we are the total sum of the whole, you know, and yet we are so connected. I think that part, so far, when I look at our approaches, sometimes we highlight it and we hide it, you know, under something. Yet it is at the key of who we are. And I think we need to highlight that going forward. For an example, the place of a human being from inception is in water. We get carried to our mother's stomachs, you know, we live in water for 9 months. And in our traditional ways of giving birth, the first cry is in water as a baby. And in our rites of passage as boys and as men, as boys and girls, with our first periods, it's in water. The rituals, the ceremonies, everything that we understand of ourselves, it is communicated and it's written, crafted in water, so much that when water is in the state, you know, that we're seeing, you know, and when the environment, the biodiversity is so depleted, it is not that, just that as outside that is depleted. It is us, that we have got no compass anymore of knowing who we are properly in the ways we have known ourselves, in the stories, in the myths and everything that has shaped us to be. And why it goes with identity in educating girls, boys, and everyone, it is in saying, you're not just protecting water as you know, potable water for consumption as that. You're just protecting who you are, because otherwise, when water is gone, that part of who we are is lost. So I think going forward, I would like us to think very strongly about that, because when our souls are empty, when we've got nothing to fix, you know, this, you know, fix not in that way of fixing, but when we've got no water, for an example, to heal everything around us, even our souls, then we are really lost. And how do you do that with a dirty spring, with a dirty stream, with a dirty river, with everything that is contaminated? We cannot, and it becomes very, very difficult. And how do you use a herb or a medicine that is contaminated for your health? You can't, so it's very difficult. The second thing is around climate finance. I think, for my experience as a grassroots mobilizer, organizer, educator, is, you know, where is this money that needs to go to the communities, and should it be so difficult for communities to access this money? All the time I'm pulled towards, oh, there's no money in your community, so go away and look for a better job somewhere else. And it's true, I'm tempted to do that because I've got kids that are young and everything like that. I've got responsibilities, but then what are we saying? If I go, then the narrative remains the same, that rural areas are. So it means I'm choosing the narrative that has been written to say, neglect the rural areas, neglect where you are, because there is something that is better somewhere else. And that narrative is very dangerous, because it is the narrative that has made our young people to move away from the community, even if there's nothing, you know, to get in the cities. Even if they go and get frustrated in the cities, they still go there because that narrative has been planted and it's so strong. And we need to change that, but without proper climate finance, you know, those young people, I cannot contain them, even myself. We've trained so many of them, but what do I train them for? To leave the community, you know, and hoping that wherever they go, they will change, they will stand up and do something better, you know. But why should young people leave their communities when there's so much work to be done around essential, the essential elements of life, which is our biodiversity, our water, our everything within our ecosystem. Why should young people leave? They shouldn't. There should be finance that goes to those communities so that young people work on something that they want to do, bringing the change they want to bring in the communities, but not just as a matter of bringing change, but they are working on their souls when they do that. I can tell you, the young people that we work with, I can put them out there. I can tell because of the work that they do, they are rooted in something that makes them to stand, and to persevere life and to be positive about life. Because when they fix water issues, they are working on themselves. When they fix the biodiversity issues, like when they go and work on agroecology, they know that they are doing something bigger than them. So I think going forward, those are the two things that I would like us to highlight, because the crisis that we see today, it's not just only capitalism as it is the spirituality that goes with capitalism, because that spirituality is empty and it takes so much from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sibongile, for that. I think it's something so important that we can talk about, the cultural and the traditional significance of nature and of water specifically. And I think what you said about, the climate finance as well is very important, especially when we talk about development and we talk about a people-centered development. And, often we're told by these big banks or by the government that these projects, these mining projects are going to bring development to the community, but we know from experience that that's not true. And so I think just pushing that idea of a people-centered development and looking at development for who and development that benefits who. So I think thank you for bringing up that point. We are over time, so I want to begin to close the meeting, but I want to firstly say thank you to the panelists for joining. Your experiences and what I see a lot of people in the comments saying that they feel so enriched by your input. So thank you so much. Once again, I'd like to convey our condolences to Sibongile and to everyone else in the call as well who has lost someone. It's a difficult time. It's a difficult month as well, with a lot of triggering posts and videos. So just want to urge everyone to always take care of your mental health and to always keep yourself safe, from the violence that is out there. So thank you for joining. If there are any last comments, please leave them in the comment section. Otherwise, thanks again to the panelists and thank you for joining. We will be posting the videos on our YouTube. So if you would like to share with any comrades, those will be up quite soon. And then in the last minute, in the spirit of solidarity, if any of the panelists have any events coming up soon that you'd like to share, I know ACA has a series of webinars going on as well. Gabe, if you'd like to give us a very short note on that, you're welcome to do so. And if any of the other panelists also have webinars or events they'd like to amplify in the space, I'm going to give time for that. So Gabe.
Thank you, Courtney, and once again, thank you to everybody who allowed the space to be what it needed to be today. I think oftentimes we don't just let it be what it needs to be in that moment. Also just to get to the point there, so a few of the things that ACA has been doing is monthly back to basics workshops and ACA dialogues. The previous one was on Indigenous knowledge and climate justice and its importance. And so you can find any of those if you search African Climate Alliance on different social media platforms. Another series of advocacy workshops and conference series that we've been doing is called Africa's Youth Voices Conference Series. I'll pop in the chat the link to the last session and more details about that. But basically, it's trying to get authentic youth voices from Africa based on African issues and African solutions to COP27 at the end of this year. You can find me and you can email me at team@africanclimatealliance.org for more information. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Yeah, with no other hands and no other inputs, just once again, thank you. And yeah, have a good rest of the week, everybody. And thank you for joining. And if you'd like to unmute and just say bye, please do so.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful
Thank you for an
evening.
inspiring
Bye.
meeting.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone. It was nice being here and learning from everyone.